Hi, Kenneth.
Hello, Anand.
It's
How
great
are
to have you
you?
here today. I'm fine. How are
Yeah,
you?
I'm fine, thank you. I wasn't going to tell you this, but I'm very honored to be here as part of this legendary gallery of OR giants.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Nice suit, by the way.
Thank you. It's new. Uh, it was,
Ah, you can really prepare.
yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. Hmm.
So today my guest is Kenneth Sörensen. He's a research professor of the Faculty of Business and Economics of the University of Antwerp in Belgium. Within this faculty, he founded the AntOR research group, which focuses on applications of OR and currently consists of 3 professors and about 10 PhD students. Under his supervision, over 20 PhDs were obtained. Kenneth has published a large number of articles in international referee journals and has presented his work at numerous scientific conferences. He is considered one of the world's leading experts in the field of metaheuristics. His main research interests lie in the application of advanced metaheuristic optimization methods and in the development and study of optimization approaches. Kenneth is the founder and current coordinator of You and Me, the Euro Working Group on Metaheuristics. I love that name, by the way. The largest online platform for researchers in metaheuristics worldwide. Kenneth, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. It's really an honor for me.
My pleasure, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's start. Kenneth, you were born in Antwerp in 1974, where you have lived to this day. Are your parents also from Antwerp, or do they come from another part of Belgium?
I'm afraid everybody is from Antwerp in my family, yes. My great-grandfather came from Denmark. That's where my name comes from, even though it's written in the Swedish way. But when he came here after the First World War, apparently the Danish Ö with a dash was not on the keyboard or something, so they used the Swedish version of that. And since then, my family has the Swedish version of the last name Sörensen. But since then, everybody has lived in Antwerp in my family.
That's very interesting. And how do you properly pronounce your surname?
I just say Sörensen, as though it's pronounced more or less in a Flemish way. Yeah.
Right. Would you say you come from an upper middle class or lower middle class family? I'm assuming middle class, by the way.
Not nobility, no. I'd say average middle class. My family was not poor at all, but we were also not rich by any standards. My mother was a nurse, even though she stopped working when she had children, so she stopped working for a few years. And my father was some sort of a logistics manager, but it took me a while to realize that both of us had rather similar careers. He did in practice what I did in research, but we usually didn't talk about his work. So yeah, I don't know much about what he really did during the day. I think he was responsible for incoming supplies in a tractor company in the port here in Antwerp.
Do you talk about logistics, or did you talk about that when you started doing research on the topic with him?
Not at all. No, simply no.
All right. Are you an only child?
No, I have a sister. She's 4 years younger, and she lives in Australia, so the other side of the planet. She works at a primary school. I went to do engineering or business engineering as a student at university, and she has a degree in English and Dutch literature, so she's more of an arts person.
Yeah, so not into logistics then.
I don't think she's into logistics, no, even though she runs like a primary school in Australia, so I imagine there's also lots of logistics problems to be solved there, but they're more of the practical hands-on types, if you know what I mean.
Right, yes. What were your days like growing up in Antwerp?
I think it was very average. I was a young boy growing up on the outskirts of a medium-sized city in Europe. So I spent my time hanging with my friends on the street. And I did many different sports. I did judo, I did horse riding at some points, a bit of mountain climbing. I played tennis, I played badminton, but all of them very recreationally and never at any high level. Yeah, sports is something I really like, but not on a competitive level.
And what about basketball? You're really tall.
Yeah.
So
I did try that actually, but after one session, I just didn't like the sports. Maybe I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was the sports. But no, I never liked basketball. Even though that would be the logical sport for me.
Yes, or volleyball. Yeah.
Or volleyball. Yeah.
Yeah, I visited Antwerp in 2022. It's a wonderful city. I liked it very much. Has it changed compared to, the 70s, 80s?
Yeah, I think so. Right now it's very, or I'd say it's becoming very bicycle oriented. So when I was young, everything was still done by car, but that is more and more going away as a way of life to take your car everywhere. So everywhere you go in Antwerp, you'll see dozens or hundreds of bikes. We have cargo bikes, we have long tail bikes where people take 3 children to school, etc. And me too. I changed completely. I don't even own a car anymore. I literally do everything by bike here in the city. And if I need a car to go somewhere more distant, for example, I just rent one. And there's numerous car sharing schemes that can be used freely. It's not free, of course, but it's available for those moments when you do need a car here in the city.
Yeah, and plenty of research opportunities regarding network design and
absolutely, yeah,
things like that.
At one point, I even worked on the distribution of bicycles in a bike sharing scheme and how to route the vehicles that take the bikes around. I really like working around those problems that are logistics problems, but not transporting containers or transporting I don't know, physical goods, but other things.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think we have that in common too. So I'm aware of your special interest in music from your past research on the topic, and we'll talk more about that later. For now, I would like to know what type of music you enjoy listening to in your younger years and what you enjoy nowadays.
Well, I'm a child of the, let's say, 80s and 90s. So as a young boy, I listened to pop music mostly. I was a big fan of Duran Duran. I don't know, do you know the British?
Of course I know.
Yes.
Popular with the ladies.
Yeah, true. But also with some boys like me. So the new romantic movement, I really like that. My first concert ever was Duran Duran in Brussels. So still remember that. And then later on, I got more into, let's say, somewhat harder music, somewhat louder music like Metallica, Megadeth, and other metal bands. And I joined the movement in the 90s for the grunge, towards the grunge music. I still remember the first time I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, for example, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, etc. And
right, all those Seattle bands.
Yeah. Yes. And we also have a very lively scene in Belgium in really nice alternative bands. Like Deus, for example, is absolutely a band you should listen to if you like alternative music. And
Yeah. What about nowadays?
Well, my favorite band, without any question, at this moment is Tool. So it's like progressive rock metal. And I'd say the closer a band is to Tool, the more I like it. So that, I love that band. Everything they do is just pure music genius for me.
Yeah, the drummer is gifted.
Best drummer in the world, no question about that.
Yes. Now that Neil Pearce from Rush died, I think it might be he might be a good candidate, at least in that genre.
Neil Peart,
yeah. I think Mark Portnoy is also a very good drummer.
Absolutely,
yeah. From
same level, I would say. But I still think Danny Carey has the edge on them for being a bit more like musical, let's say. I like when the drum performs a role which is not typical of the drum, and that's what he does. It's just another instrument, and that's really, really cool.
I think he's more crazy than Mark Portnoy. Mark Portnoy perhaps is more methodical, like Neil Peart. They're both influenced by him, right? From
Definitely,
Neil Peart from Rush,
and vice versa. I'm sure all of these guys influence each other. They're all very well. All of them are virtuoso drummers. And they're incredible mastery of their instruments. So it's just comes down to which type of creativity you prefer, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
I like when drummers are able to make a very complicated rhythm sound like it's straightforward, and vice versa. That's always blows my mind how you can do that.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned Duran Duran. I like Ordinary World. That song is just great. And many of their songs were really popular in Brazil, like Rio, Save a Prayer, and others. So yeah, they're really good. And do you play any musical instrument?
I do, actually. I play the guitar. And I don't play a lot, and I'm not very good either, but I've played for, I don't know, like 30 years, more, 35 years, and I still play even a tiny bit every day. That's,
Wow.
Just, it's there, I take it, play a bit, and I don't have one here, otherwise I'd...
No, and it's yet another thing that we have in common.
Yeah,
I think we have a lot in common, except that you're really tall and I'm really short.
Yeah, you don't see that on the internet.
Yeah. So yeah, I play the guitar. I don't know, since 1991. So it's close to 35 years or so.
Yeah, cool. Next conference, I'll bring one and you bring one and we get together.
Yes, yeah. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, like traveling overseas if you're meeting in Europe, but but then I can borrow from someone. Then we can play a bit.
Let's try something like that.
Yeah. But you cannot play Tool because it's too complicated.
It's not that bad. I can teach you.
Okay. And what type of books were you into back in the day?
I read everything: literature, nonfiction. I have a special knack for science fiction, I must add. Up to this day, I love science fiction books, but I read a lot and I read everything.
Right.
Even though these days with the family and children, there's not much time to read. So I read in bed until I fall asleep every evening, even when it's just a few pages.
Yes.
You know.
And it seems that you and subject to guest Tom Von Woensel attended the same school at the same time. But somehow you didn't know each other, right?
We knew each other, but we were not ever close, I think. She was in the same year as I was, different class, same year. And somehow we missed each other. I knew who he was, he knew who I was probably, but we were never close friends or anything.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
That is a coincidence. We ended up at the same university in the same departments. Doing our PhDs, very remarkable.
Yeah.
He told me that he was going to become an actor after high school, so I don't know if he talked about that in the subject.
No, I don't remember. No, okay. Yeah, I know he plays in a musical group and things like that, so he has an artistic talent, but I didn't know he wanted to be an actor.
Well, maybe I misremembered. It's a very long time ago, so it could be that's something my mind made up at some point. So.
Yeah. Right, and you ended up working on the same field, and now you're both subject to guests.
Yeah,
very
wow.
Nice.
How the lines of life intertwine.
Intertwine, yes. And how did you do in school?
Very well. I was actually always top of my class. He says without any modesty. No, I was a very good student. Studying just came very easily to me, and I didn't study very hard, but it was just easy.
Any favorite subjects?
Sounds incredibly blasé, I know, but...
No, it's just how things are.
Any favorite subjects? Well, I studied mathematics in high school, so I had a lot of mathematics, and I really liked that. But, I mean, I had an interest in most topics, I must say. Languages also. Yeah, maybe not history. There's a thing that I'm very, very bad at remembering dates up to this point. Very bad at putting events in a timeline, something like that. So history didn't click with me because I didn't have the mental map of when things happened in history. Still to this day, yeah, I make stupid mistakes in that respect.
Yeah, I understand. Did you have access to computers at that time?
Yeah, I did actually. I had a Sinclair ZX Spectrum computer. I don't know if you
Yeah, I've heard
know
about it.
that model. It's like very early personal computer. And I had one at home, could program it in BASIC. Only had, if I remember well, 48 kilobytes of memory, and that was it. So almost no external memory except for cassette tapes. So yeah, any programming needed to be extremely efficient to fit in the memory of that little thing.
Yeah. And how did you learn how to code?
Oh, I learned myself. I think bought magazines at the time. Of course, we didn't have the internet at the time, so went to the bookshop and bought a magazine, and there were these codes in the magazine, and you could literally copy them from the printed code in the magazine. I think that was my main way of coding, and then just trying things yourself and seeing what happened, which is, I guess, what we still do today.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah. So was that early 90s or?
And now you're asking me for dates and years. So that must have been like late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Around.
Sorry about that. So how was the process of choosing your university degree?
Well, my broad interests meant that after high school, I didn't have a really clear idea of what I wanted to do. So I looked at many different options, and even at some point thought about becoming a fighter pilot for the army. I still remember the folders with the F-16 airplanes on them that I had. But in the end, I chose a university study that was broad, still very left many options, had many different types of courses, and I did what was called commercial engineering, and now we call it business engineering. So it's a cross between business and economics, and on the other hand, engineering, like physics, chemistry, but also physical and chemical technology. So it's oriented as somehow like a bridge function between the business people in a company and the engineering people in the company.
Right. Yeah. It's somewhat similar to industrial engineering, I would say.
Yeah, it's somewhat similar, but industrial engineering in Belgium is basically the university college version of civil engineering. So for us, that sounds different.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
So it's a slightly more practically oriented version of civil engineer. That's what we call industrial engineer.
Yeah.
So there is,
Right. Any contact with OR at a time?
At university, very little. I had a few courses that bordered on OR. I think there was even one that was called Operations Research. I think I had linear programming in a math course at some point, simplex methods, etc. But I must say that when I went to do research later on OR, that was the time when everything fell into place, and then I saw what OR was and how broad it actually is, and what you can do with it. Knowledge of the field of OR just came a lot later for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after 5 years, you got your master's degree, and tell me about your master's project.
My master's project was in programming. Actually, I did this business engineer degree in information systems technology. So it's like a specialization of the degree, where the focus is not on chemical or physical technology, but more on IT technology. Which was, of course, very important at that time because the internet was appearing, personal computers were more or less everywhere. So businesses started having computers and using them as the basis of their organizations. And my master thesis was on a programming methodology for the business applications called Jackson Structured Programming, which was a method by an English computer scientist called Michael Jackson, not the singer, but same person with the same name. And what I did was I basically automated his method. So I built a tool that could take as input a description of input data, like they say a table of sales, and then a description of what the output should look like. It's like a summary report with totals, etc. And then my tool would, based on those two descriptions, write the code that would transform this data into that data. That was it. And I even sent emails to Michael Jackson himself, again, not the singer, but and he wrote me back. I was very enthusiastic about my project. So I think that was my first interaction with a real scientist who is not a professor of mine at the university.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. After completing your master's in 1997, did you go straight into a PhD program?
No, actually, I didn't want to go into a PhD program. I wanted to have a real job, so to speak. So I went to work for a software company, implementing business software. It was the time of the year 2000 bug. I graduated in 97. So I don't know if you remember, but
of course I remember. Yeah.
Of course you remember, yeah. You're old enough to remember around that time, we thought the world was going to come to an end at 1 January 2000 because the date fields were not going to be able to contain the new date anymore and everything was going to go wrong. So
the millennium bug, right?
Sorry? The millennium bug, yeah. Yeah. So a lot of my classmates from business engineers in computer or in information systems actually went to fix the millennium bug, went to work for companies that took all this old COBOL code and changed it, made it year 2000 compliant by fixing the dates and making them for, But, in the end, nothing happened. And I think we were very good at fixing the millennium bug then.
Yeah, so your experience in the industry did not last that long. And what made you return to academia?
No, yeah, I say it only lasted 3 months. What made me return to the academia, maybe the question is better, like who made me return to the academia? And the answer to that is the mother of my then girlfriend. Because I didn't really think it was something for me to be a PhD student and get a PhD. And I was talking to her at some point, and there was a vacancy for teaching a research assistant in operations research. And she said, well, I think it would be something for you. You're interested in difficult stuff and finding things out and etc. And that made me think up to a point where I reconsidered my decision. And then, I basically got the position as a teaching and research assistant at that. So in 1997, 1st of October, I was working at the University of Antwerp.
Very, very unusual influence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And what happened to that girlfriend?
At some point, she dumped me for somebody else, if I remember. Yeah, she she left me for somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, right. You decided to become a PhD student. Maybe she said, maybe I should look for something more promising. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that was the case. Yeah, no, maybe. I don't know what her reasoning was. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So I need to go cry for a few minutes and I'll be back.
Okay. The PhD programs around the world include different activities. What was like it in your case?
I was a teaching and research assistant, so my position was basically 50% teaching and 50% research. In teaching, I taught database design and things like physical logistics management, so a variety of courses. I like to teach. I thought that was an interesting, an interesting diversion from doing research all the time, which is of course much more lonely and just you and your office and your computer. So there was a teaching, but on the other hand, there was also the research. And my supervisor was Gerrit Janssens, who was then at the University of Antwerp, and he was like operations research homo universalis, if you know what I mean. So he had all of these different projects going on at the same time, very interesting little research projects. And he would come to me with all these different ideas, and I would then execute them. So hey, I have an idea. Why don't we build a Petri net model to simulate machine failures in a production system? So sure. So went to look up what is a Petri net. Okay, and then I built that, published a paper on that, and the next 2 weeks later he'd come to me. I didn't publish a paper in 2 weeks, but you know what I mean? So then 2 weeks later he says, oh, I have an idea. Why don't we try to generate statistical variables using a lambda distribution as the basis? Okay, something completely different, but let's go. And then I did that. And he did this again and again and again. And it was very interesting because I saw many different areas of operations research because I had such a diversified supervisor at that point. So that was very interesting for me. And he left me relatively free. If I didn't feel like doing something, that was perfectly fine. He was just giving me ideas. I would do them and then see what happens.
Yeah, that was great for you to also develop some culture, right? And to have a, sort of a holistic perspective of the area, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And how was the process of choosing your PhD topic?
Oh, that was a long, difficult process because, if you're doing all these different topics, it's of course very difficult to pick one and say, well, here's going to be my PhD. And I don't think I wanted to do a PhD like essays on operations research or something with all these different things in there. So I looked for an actual topic for quite a long time. And one day it was again, my supervisor Gerrit would come to me and say, oh, I have an idea. Why don't we build a metaheuristic, a genetic algorithm for binary classification trees? I said, okay, cool. But what is a metaheuristic? What is a genetic algorithm? And what are binary classification trees? Again, looked into it. I said, okay, that's very interesting. And then he said, and there's this Winter Institute that you could go to on metaheuristics. I didn't know what a metaheuristic was at that time, but using that, the binary classification tree genetic algorithm, I was able to get into the Metaheuristics Winter Institute, organized by Alain Hertz and Marino Wittmer. It was 1998 in Switzerland, in a ski resort. So I submitted that paper, got accepted, and then spent 2 weeks among all different researchers in metaheuristics, doing research all day and some skiing also. And that's where I fell in love with metaheuristics. So all these different applications and all these different methods that seem to work so well, be able to solve all these different problems. And with very inspiring guest speakers. I remember Manuel Laguna, there was Martin Grötschel was there. So really incredible giants of the field. And we were really, really inspired by that. So that really changed my life. And from that point on, I knew, okay, I'm going to do my PhD in metaheuristics.
Right. And the Euro working group on metaheuristics was born there, right?
It was, at the end, the last day of the winter school. We had such a wonderful time, such a creative, constructive time there. We did so much, we learned so much from each other that at the end, together with a few other participants in the winter school, we thought we cannot let this go to waste. We need to keep seeing each other and we need to take this forward. And I think it was Alain Hertz that then said, there's this instrument called Euro working groups. And I don't think there is one on metaheuristics. So, okay, what we did was we started the Euro working group on metaheuristics there and later applied for that to become the official Euro working group on metaheuristics. And I don't know if you know the logo of the UMe, it was called UMe. We were being very creative there, you and me, because we like to do things together. And the logo actually is a pool table, because we played lots of pool also in the evenings at the Winter Institute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many subject guests also mentioned having excellent experiences going to summer schools or winter school, or the so-called Euro Summer Institute, right? That they also had. And it's an opportunity to connect with not only the stars of the field, but also the younger generation. And having the chance to mingle and to interact with these young folks, they have similar age. And if you develop a good connection with them, maybe that can pave the way for many collaborations in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, those summer schools and winter schools are, of course, fantastic to learn to know people, especially if they're 2 weeks. You're together for 2 weeks looking at each other's research all the time. But of course, they're incredibly intensive to organize. And I know from my experience as Euro VP too, that it's very hard to find people willing to organize such winter or summer institutes, even though a lot of money is available for that. Yeah, it's just such an incredible investment in time to organize it. That's why I'm still so thankful to Alain Hertz and especially Marino Wittmer. I think he recently retired. That they organized it, because it really changed my life. Mm-hmm. I met some of my best friends. I'm going to mention Marc Sevaux, for example. I see him several times per year, at least. One of my best friends in research and outside of that. So, yeah, it changed my life completely.
Yes, and you're not the first to share this type of experience. And I urge and encourage the students, if they have the chance to attend these schools, they should, because it's not only about learning new topics or getting to know these famous people, but also for the sake of networking with people from your own generation. I think that's something really valuable. Yeah. And what do you consider to be the key contributions of your PhD?
Okay, my PhD was on robust optimization, so on building or bringing in robustness measures in situations where demands or some parameters of the optimization model are stochastic or unknown. I think now we'd call it simulation optimization. So the proposal was to run a small simulation sort of as the objective function of the optimization model. And I did that for different types of optimization problem and also for different types of robustness and flexibility. Flexibility meaning that you have some recourse procedure that you can change the solution with even after you are running it. Yeah. And I also looked into robustness from the perspective of robustness in the solution space, not just in the objective function space. So take a routing problem where you visit the same customers every day. You don't want the same vehicle or the same driver to go to completely different customers every day, because then you lose a lot of the driver getting used to the area, etc. You lose a lot of efficiency just because of the changing of the routes every day. So, but that's also like a form of robustness in the solution space, where you don't want the solution to deviate from itself over different runs of the optimization model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that particular application reminds me of the consistent VRP.
Yeah, it's completely similar to that.
Yeah. Right. After a 2-year postdoc at the University of Antwerp from 2003 to 2005, you went on to another postdoc, this time at KU Leuven. What did you take away from that experience?
Well, first, that it's always a good idea to do a postdoc at least somewhere else. I've been at the University of Antwerp my entire life. So much so that even when I started working for the University of Antwerp, I could see the hospital where I was born from the window of my office. Now, that's no longer the case, but I'm still not very far from that place. So, after some time, you become part of the furniture, so to speak. You're taken for granted, etc. So at least moving to another faculty for me was very, very useful. Also because it was an engineering faculty, not a business faculty, and a faculty with a very different, they were also doing optimization and they were also doing heuristics and logistics, but much more practically oriented, with a much more industrial focus. So what I learned there is that real life problems can be very interesting to try to model them and see which characteristics are unique and how can I adapt the algorithms to those real life models, etc. And again, this period has been very life-changing for me. Still, I see many people that I used to work with at that time in Leuven. I still see them and I still work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
Very useful. Yeah.
We're going to talk about bridging the gap between theory and practice in a while, but I'm sure that experience was really good for you. And in 2007, you returned to the University of Antwerp as a faculty member. Now it was your turn to supervise students. I would like to hear about your approach to supervision, from choosing a research topic to guiding research activities.
Ooh, that's a difficult question, I think. When I came back to Antwerp as like a junior professor, you're basically almost like a postdoc in the sense that, except that you don't have a supervisor anymore, but you're there. I didn't enter into like a very active research group. So basically started my own research group and started applying for funding from different sources and was relatively successful in applying for funding. So I got then to attract different PhD students, and then the ball got rolling and I could build the research group, etc. In the beginning, a few students left. Some projects didn't go well, so that was an exciting period, not always in the good sense. There was also a bit of a stressful period because at some point you need to get the ball rolling and your research group needs to gain some momentum, of course, and otherwise it's peters out and then you're left with not much. But okay, that was okay, and I tried to find clever students and make them work on a problem that I thought was relevant, something which I had seen in Leuven. So I brought the more practically oriented optimization problems into the University of Antwerp Faculty of Business and Economics. And that was my, that was what I tried. And in terms of guiding the students, I still like to take an approach where you try to empower the students to think for themselves. And so supervising means being there when they need you, giving advice when needed, but also encouraging the students to find their own way, develop their own view of the field, their own methodology, their own problems, etc., which is not always possible because some of them are working on a project which has specific targets and deadlines. So sometimes you have to keep them more or less within the bounds of that project. But empowerment for me is a very important word there. Try to make the students find their own way in the scientific landscape and become scientists by themselves, not just your aides who do your work for you, so to speak.
Yeah. I can fully relate to that. It's like bringing their identity rather than imposing them yours, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You supervised a very good friend of mine, subject to guest Dorien Herremans. I've already asked her about the fascinating work you did together on music and optimization, but I would love to hear your impressions of it.
Actually, Dorien is a very good example of what we just discussed. I met her in a bookstore and she was talking about wanting to leave her job and maybe do some research oriented. And I said, okay, we might have an open position at the university. So she applied and got it. And when she started working, I was her supervisor and I told her, okay, in terms of topics, I would advise you to pick something that would be useful when you go to industry later. So maybe something related to routing or scheduling or optimization in that respect. And she said, no, I want to do music and optimization, something which she had done in her master thesis with me, which is where I know her from. So I said, Okay, well, be aware that not many people in industry are going to be interested in music and optimization, but if that's what you want to do, then go for it. And she went for it, and well, she made a brilliant career in research out of it. So that's a beautiful story, if you ask me. That's how, if you let somebody free, then they can become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, you did not cut out her wings. You just let her fly.
Let her fly.
Yeah, and thanks to that, I was able to also do some research on music and optimization. I contacted Dorien, and we did this very nice work where we generated guitar solos for 12-bar blues using integer programming. And
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So and
this was related to the work she did in her PhD, where she generated like classical music. On,
right. Yeah, I'm more into rock and all of that, and so it was more, let's say, natural for me to look for applications into that direction rather than classical music, where I lack some background. But anyway, cool. It's somewhat, we are somewhat connected through Dorien, and it's wonderful. So Kenneth, what do you say are your main research contributions of the last 15 years?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Perhaps two things I would say. One is in modeling and solving a few original optimization problems related to mostly vehicle routing, but different in that they are generally not about transporting goods like in this vehicle routing problem. For example, I introduced the school bus routing problem, which I think is now a quite active area of research. When I started working on that problem, you basically only had the really intricate and complicated school bus routing problems, where you had a million different constraints. All the real life aspects were taken into the optimization model. And for this research, I thought, okay, why don't we look at what the essence of this problem is? And then it turned out to be something really elegant, where you have students which you can assign to bus stops, and then take them on a school bus in a route. So it was a routing plus student to stop assignment, the school bus routing problem. And then later that became, or that also was not transformed, but it turned out another application in public transport, the on-demand bus routing problem, where you assume that you have a set of buses that do routes which are completely on demand, but also where you can ask customers or passengers to walk to a bus stop. That has a very similar problem, different, but similar. So that's another one. So what I really like, but what we really don't study enough, I think, is modeling. Most courses on operations research assume that the model is given, or if it's not explicitly given, it's the assignment or the topic is worded in such a way that only one model is basically possible. But the real world doesn't work like that. If you come to a company or you look at a situation, there's always so many decisions you have to make on, okay, do I model this or do I model that? Do I model it in this way or do I model it in that way? And we've been doing it for such a long time, but there's so little information about what makes a good model and how do you model complex situations. So the only way you can teach students to model is to have them do it, I guess. So in modeling and developing algorithms for a few original optimization problems, I'd say that is a contribution I look back to with some pride, so to speak. And the second maybe is, my second research line is to try to bring more science into the field of metaheuristics, which is a very broad topic, but it relates to correctly comparing different algorithms to each other. But it also goes further in trying to learn things from a pile of literature on a topic that we have, and make our research less anecdotal, less
freestyle.
There is this algorithm which works better than that algorithm. So, a lot can be said about that. I don't know. Probably we'll come back to that later in this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was again influenced by your work because I love the school bus routing problem. And interestingly enough, we published a paper this year, our research group, and we compare our results to yours. So,
you probably beat us by 1,000,000%.
The usual horse racing, right? But but we came up with some nice ideas, and it was a math heuristic published in the Journal of the Operational Research Society. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Clever trick, by the way. If you publish a problem and a first algorithm for that problem, don't make it too good, because you want people to be able to beat you, because otherwise they will not publish their papers, which is again something which is wrong with our field, I guess. But
I know how it works. Yes.
Topic for discussion.
Yes, absolutely. So Kenneth, we have to talk about your remarkable and important paper, Metaheuristics, the metaphor exposed. Again, I was also influenced by that work. So could you share the story behind this article?
My most cited article by far. The story is, that I was noticing, and not just me, I talking to people, that I was noticing this, I called it a tsunami of metaphor-based methods, of which in the best case, it was unclear what their contribution was, because the method was based on a metaphor and completely expressed in the terminology of the metaphor. So you got the harmony search algorithm, which was supposedly based on how musicians play together. And then you read the paper and they don't talk about solutions or objective function. No, all of a sudden we're talking about harmonies and musicians and notes and things like that. So, and then another paper appears with a bee colony optimization algorithm, and all of a sudden it's no longer about solutions again, but it's now about bees flying to colonies and dancing for each other, etc. So if you read the paper from an operations research perspective, expecting the language of algorithms and optimization, what is this, right? So I made a presentation, which I presented at the Euro conference in Vilnius, just basically asking people to stop using new metaphors, or at the very least, do their own translation of the algorithm in metaphor-free vocabulary. And Celso Ribeiro was in my talk, and he still is the editor-in-chief of the International Transactions in Operational Research. And he came to me and said, why don't you write this into a paper and submit it to ITOR, which I did. And the rest is history. That paper was published, and now it's my most cited paper, but I think at least half of the sites are for terrible reasons. Sites by like the buffalo optimizer or the ant-lion optimizer, the grasshopper optimizer, etc. They all cite this paper while cherry picking one or two things that are in there, as if that would support the development of the stupid metaphor-based methods.
Which is unbelievable.
it's completely unbelievable. Yeah. I think it's a matter of like, keep your friends close, but your enemies even closer, something like that. But, Okay. Yeah. It increases my citation count. I don't care about my citation count, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. And did the paper achieve what you expected it to?
No, not at all. No, the paper did not achieve what I expected it to achieve at all, actually. Yeah? I mean, let's say I did not really expect it to stop all metaphor-based metaheuristics, but maybe somehow dampen the enthusiasm for it. But I mean, the reverse seems to have happened. There is still a close to exponential increase in these number of methods. There's a paper just appeared maybe a year or so ago called an exhaustive review of metaheuristics, and that lists over 500 of these methods with ever crazier metaphors being used, because of course all the relatively sane metaphors are used up by now. So you can only invent completely crazy things like the doll maker algorithm or the consultant algorithm. I mean, none of this makes sense, especially if you know that if you start digging into these algorithms and start comparing them to existing algorithms, in all of the cases you'll find these algorithms already exist. They're just the same method with different names, making it much more complicated for us to get an overview of the field and what is being done. So yeah, terrible idea, don't do it. No metaphors, please.
Yeah, and it damages the reputation of the field quite a lot. It makes me really sad, you know?
Yeah, it makes us look like a bunch of idiots to outsiders, I think. If you say, I'm into metaheuristics, oh yeah, I know the octopus algorithm and the donkey mating algorithm. Yeah, it's not that. The other side of metaheuristics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How do you view the current state of metaheuristics research?
Well, it's a very active field of research. We're doing amazing work. The algorithms we build are simply incredible. If you look at vehicle routing as an example, when I was in my PhD, doing my PhD, a vehicle routing problem with 100 customers or 150 customers was considered a large vehicle routing problem. Just a few years ago, I did research with a PhD student on solving a 30,000 customer vehicle routing problem in a couple of minutes, and I saw a very recent paper by
Luca Corsi and Daniele Vigo on solving 1 million.
Daniele Vigo, Luca Corsi, indeed. Millions of customers. It's amazing. If you see what progress has been made there, it's completely amazing. So I think if you look at us as a community, I think we really need a dedicated conference, and maybe MIC, which is a relatively small conference, only happens every couple of years. Maybe we should have a yearly MIC conference, but a large one which focuses exclusively on metaheuristics and is not application oriented. There are conferences which are almost exclusively metaheuristic-based, conferences on routing, for example, where every session is a different algorithm for a routing conference. But there's not that much room for research on metaheuristics themselves, irregardless of which problem you're solving, etc. And I think that is what we're going to need in the future if we're going to be a more serious research community.
Yes, and you mentioned that an issue arises when discussing metaheuristic-based algorithms is how to properly compare them. What's your take on this matter?
Yeah, John Hooker in 1995, testing heuristics, we have it all wrong. We still have it all wrong because we're still doing the same thing. We're taking algorithm 1, and then algorithm 2, and then, okay, this is slightly better, so this is a better research. But John Hooker said it in 1995, it's still true. Research doesn't really work like that because you don't learn too much from that, except that this complicated algorithm is better than that complicated algorithm. So when comparing heuristics, also, I think at least you need to do some statistics to know that the differences are significant. You need to test your algorithm on different instances than the one you developed it on. In machine learning, for example, that's the mortal sin to train your algorithm and then test it on the same instances. That's you're killed for that. But I think it's actually broader than that. We need more objective comparisons that are not reliant on things like how good is the programmer of this algorithm versus the programmer of that algorithm. And what type of compiler does he use, and what type of compiler optimizations might influence. And so we need to be able to compare the algorithm itself without all of the implementation details, because that will allow us to learn about the algorithm itself and not taking everything else to be the same. If I can continue.
Sure, please, go ahead.
I think it's even broader than that. It relates to who we are as a research field. I've been looking into a bit of history here. And if you look at the history of metaheuristics and heuristics, it arises as a field at approximately the same time as exact methods. So Second World War, first methods to do logistics planning, simplex method, inexact methods, etc. And we see a similar appearance of heuristics and later metaheuristics there. But we've always had this type of inferiority complex in the field of heuristics and metaheuristics. Why? Because the field of exact methods had this incredibly beautiful mathematics to rely on. And the mathematics was not only beautiful and you could study the methods with, but it directly informed the methodology, the shape of the complex polytope of a linear programming problem, and the fact that you can move around on the edges of that polytope until you reach the optimal solution, right? So this is convexity, nice mathematical theory, which directly informs the simplex algorithm. Right? Take duality, beautiful mathematical theory, links the primal to the dual, but also informs you how to build primal dual methods, primal dual simplex, for example, etc. And there's a Karash-Kuhn-Tucker conditions, so much of the beautiful mathematics, and metaheuristics and heuristics had none of that. And we tried. Right? We had things like convergence proofs for simulated annealing, for example. If you let a simulated annealing algorithm under certain conditions, you can prove that it will always reach the optimal solution. Caveat, if you give it an infinite amount of time. Right, but that's not really interesting. Huh? So even though in itself there was nothing wrong with that proof, and then it's interesting to read and to see how they do it, it told us nothing about how to develop a good simulated annealing algorithm. I remember my first MIC conference in Porto. There was big news. We have finite convergence proof for taboo search. So under very specific conditions, you can prove that the taboo search algorithm will converge, and better than in infinite time, it will do so in finite time. Sure, but you do that by proving that the solution will, that the process will always encounter all possible solutions. But it's an exponential number of solutions, so that's also not a very useful result. There's this schema theorem in genetic algorithms. So it's all these attempts to try to underpin heuristics with this mathematics like they did in exact methods, but for heuristics it didn't work. We never had this beautiful mathematics, and that gave us a bit of, I think, an inferiority complex. There's a beautiful saying of Fred Glover, which I cannot recite by heart, but it boils down to, people view it like if you're a serious researcher, you do exact methods, and if you're like a lowly practitioner, okay, then you can do heuristics, but that's just playing around in the basement, and you're being, if you want to be among the top serious guys, you need to do exact methods, and heuristics are not taken seriously. So that gave us a bit of an inferiority complex, but we countered that because our methods simply worked. And we were able to solve much larger problems much faster than exact methods. So there's the other way. So what I was going to say that metaheuristics was always empirical as a science, not funded by mathematics, but funded by empirical evidence. You build something, you try it on something else, you build a method, try it on a problem, it works. Okay, I have proof that it works. So empirical. And I think now we need to see that there is really nothing wrong with this empirical foundation of heuristics and metaheuristics, but we need to do it right. We need to look at other empirical sciences, see how are you doing your research, how are you learning more general rules about your topic of study. Like take medicine, for example, right? How do we know aspirin works? Well, there might be some theory which says, aspirin has this effect on these nerve cells. I don't know if it's there, but the real reason we know aspirin works is because they have been given aspirin to many different people. And from all of that joint data, I've made one single conclusion that, okay, aspirin works, makes your headache better, right? And we need to do something similar in metaheuristics because we don't have that type of knowledge. I know, for example, that Hexali is a commercial product based on mostly local search, I'd say. And they use late acceptance. Late acceptance is an acceptance criterion where you don't accept a solution because it's better than the immediate previous one, but it's better than one which is a few steps back in the line of solutions that you're looking for. Okay, that works. Where is the article that proves that it works? We don't have it. Right? I cannot come up with an article that proves to you, look, across a wide range of conditions, late acceptance is actually better than steepest descent or... And why is that? Well, because we have not been looking for that. And any evidence we have on that is anecdotal. Right? Yeah, oh yeah, I know this paper from 21 where this guy applied late acceptance and he compared it to steepest descent and their late acceptance was slightly better. Okay, but that's just one data point. And I need to know for sure that if I implement it, I have a high probability or I have a big chance of it working better. So we need to start looking more for that type of knowledge, more general knowledge, which does not depend on single data points, single algorithms with all the developed by one researcher, programmed by one programmer, run on one instance set for one type of problem, but more general knowledge that is widely valid and not based on anecdotes. Voila.
Wow.
That's my... Here is my research program for the coming years.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for this lecture. It was great. Yeah, I know that our community loves complex things, right?
It does,
it tends to underappreciate simplicity and flexibility.
That's another thing,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah, one thing is you always need to try to find the simplest version of the algorithm that still has that same performance. If the complexity is not needed, you need to cut it out. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, but for some, it's too simple. I don't see the contribution, and it works. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So still this direction, right? Of thinking of ways to improve the comparison between algorithms and so on. Many authors in our field are quite reluctant to share code or even binaries. What do you think motivates this protective attitude, and what could be done to encourage a more collaborative mindset?
There's probably different reasons. I think one of the big reasons is that sharing your code is extra work. If I write code for me to put the results in a paper, the code is full of ugly comments. Maybe I'm not even that great of a programmer and I'm using things that are not really, that are frowned upon in the language I'm using them. I'm using constructs that are not really clean. Maybe the code still has bugs here and there, but if I run it enough times, then okay, by chance I will root around those, etc. All of that you don't want in code that you share with other people. You want clean code, you want code that is well commented, which with a clear manual, for example. So I think one of the reasons why we don't share code is because it's more work. Maybe we're afraid that other people will find errors in our code and then invalidate our findings. It's a risk to share your code, I guess, in some sense, even though it has obviously incredible advantages, it's also a risk. And why take that risk if nobody asks you to take it? There's really very little incentive to take that risk.
That's why I mentioned the binaries, right? At least you're not showing your code, but at least someone can execute it in a...
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, if it was up to me and I would be editor-in-chief of some journal, I would make it mandatory to share the code. Right. Because I think we can benefit so much as a community from starting to share codes. It's not just about me and my code, but if somebody wants to build on my algorithm, right now he has to start from scratch.
Exactly.
To re-implement everything. And I tried it sometimes, re-implementing an algorithm. That's incredibly difficult to get it right. It's incredibly difficult to re-implement an algorithm exactly in the same way that the author intended it. So we really need to share code. It will take us much further, waste much less time people re-implementing the wheel, so to speak. So we need to do that. And I would simply make it mandatory, but it would also require a cultural change. I think if I see my colleagues in machine learning, for them it's unthinkable to publish a paper on a code where the code is not on GitHub. And for us, that's a complete. Some journals have that, I believe, but most still don't.
Yeah,
and
informed journal computing now is going to that direction, right? Yeah.
No, fortunately.
Yeah, for example, if you take the late acceptance criterion that you mentioned, suppose you have a variety of codes available, then you could test the idea on several codes that could be associated with best known algorithms from different problems. And then you'll have a more solid result and, even less bias because you're just, taking someone else's code and trying to incorporate that and show whether that idea works or not. And that's what we're trying to do, like pinpoint and identify important elements, ingredients of those algorithms and, provide some insights rather than doing intricate methods or developing complicated code just to show that you were smart enough to do relevant work. So the measure of relevance at times becomes a measure of how you are skilled or you're talented enough to make things complicated enough so it gets one's attention and it deserves some recognition in that regard.
Yeah. That's a great point. Actually, we did a paper together with Renata Turkish, a PhD student, and Lars Magnus Vattum from Molde. We did a paper on meta-analysis for adaptive large neighborhood search, where we wanted to see what happens if you turn off the adaptiveness in adaptive large neighborhood search. And we wanted to see it across as many different problems and algorithms as we could. And we found one paper where they had actually tested that. One. But that's not a big analysis, of course, of one paper. So we basically contacted dozens of authors asking them, like, could you please rerun your algorithm for us with parameter alpha equal to 0? And we were very lucky because dozens said, oh yeah, no problem. Surprised me a lot that we got so much response. People in OR are very collaborative, very helpful. But it shouldn't have to be like that. It should be much easier to take an existing algorithm and run it with a different parameter setting. You shouldn't have to contact the original author to achieve that, as we have to do now.
Yeah, right. It requires a change of culture, as you mentioned, and it might take some time, but something has to be done, right? And I've seen some people dedicating their time to providing open source optimization software to the community based on both heuristic and exact methods. However, these projects don't seem to grow much as the community often doesn't contribute. What can be done to encourage more initiative in this context?
Yeah, good question. I think it's largely cultural, or at least there is a big cultural part. We're not used to collaborating together on open codes. We're not used to having stuff on GitHub and being able to download each other's code and combining them in different ways. We just don't do that. Maybe the way we value research by saying, okay, the one who builds the best algorithm automatically becomes the best researcher. Maybe that is also detrimental to that spirit of collaboration, even though people are really nice and collaborative. Yeah, if I share my code with everybody, then everybody can just use it. Then whoever makes a small tweak that improves my algorithm then gets to publish another paper using basically my work. I don't know. It's a cultural thing combined with the lack of incentives for that. Okay, you put all that work in developing the open source, becomes more of a framework, which is a lot of software engineering too. Many of our people, are not software engineers. They know how to program, but in the sense they know their language and their editor, and that's it. But building a framework that other people can use and that can be reused in different ways also requires another way of thinking about software itself.
Right. Yeah, and I think also research on software engineering of optimization algorithms, I think it's something that's important. Especially if you think about practical work. So how far are you willing to compromise the performance for the sake of, you know, having a code that is easier to maintain or to adapt? So we need this type of discussions, and we have some people that are totally capable of doing that, but maybe we don't know how to properly value that work or even appreciate that. So as Ted Ralph said once, that we, as a community, we don't know how to evaluate optimization software properly. So
yeah, it's true.
And Kenneth, what about publishing practical work? Have you faced any difficulties in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, practical work, I think, is very rare. Real practical work, because there are several things. One is that you usually implement it in a company and they don't want to have the algorithm published that they're using it. So that's a thing. But also from a methodological point of view, I think most practical algorithms are usually not that incredibly exciting. You need to make them work. They're always going to be simpler than something which is really fine-tuned to a very specific, let's say, academic optimization problem. It's going to be simpler, it's going to be more robust, there's going to be less special tricks and Metaheuristics influences there. And then reviewers are going to say, yeah, this is not really novel, or the algorithm is not very exciting, as you say, So it's true. We should have dedicated channels for publishing practical work. You know, of course, you could argue that implementing an existing algorithm in a practical setting in itself is not. You have to wonder, when does it stop being research and does it just start being software engineering? Huh? So that's a question to which I don't have the answer.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
It's an open question. It requires a lot of discussion. Not an easy one. But at the same time, OR is about solving real life problems, and if we don't value that, even in academia, who is going to take?
I think it ties to the previous long lecture I gave. I mean, if you start doing these empirical research methods, but start doing them well, then it starts becoming research. Okay, so now I implemented this simple algorithm in practice, but now I'm going to see, does it really work? Am I sure? What are the different parameters that contribute to it working? Under which circumstances does it stop working, etc.? And that, I think, goes back to being actual scientific research. So.
Yes. So instead of coming up with an algorithm from scratch, you can take several algorithms and try to see which ones fit, and it seems more promising, and not only from a solution quality perspective or computational time, but how doable was to adapt it, did it require a lot of tweaks, and if you take the implementation effort, tuning, of parameters and so on. So I think there's a way there should be a way, at least, to value practical work as long as the research practices are carefully conducted. You see what I mean? So.
And again, I think we can learn from medicine there. They have some very good practices on how to set up a research. If you want to test a medicine against malaria, etc., if you want to test that and write a paper on it, there's a very strict protocols on how you should do that and how you should report on that, etc. And one thing is, you need to basically submit the results and the paper before you do the results. And the paper is accepted without the outcome of the experiment in it. So even if it's, no, this doesn't work against malaria, paper is still published, provided that the setup, so the research is evaluated not like we do on the quality of the output, but on the quality of the setup and the way you do research. If you have, and I think we should do similar things, if you have a perfectly sensible idea for a heuristic, but it doesn't work, then that is also interesting research, which should also be published. We did it for path relinking, for example. Path relinking for the vehicle routing problem. We tried it, and it didn't work. whichever way we tried it, it didn't work.
Same here.
Okay.
I did that
published
in
a paper.
2008 or something. I remember. Yeah.
Did you publish it?
No, because it didn't work.
Oh, well, I did publish it. I thought, okay, what we can do is we can say, okay, we can tweak it a bit more so that it becomes, I don't know, in the list of algorithms at that time, the 13th best algorithm for the vehicle routing problem. Huh? So you could say, okay, here's another algorithm of the vehicle routing problem to put on the pile. Or we can make a much clearer message, a much more informative message. Path relinking, at least in the way we are doing it for the VRP, doesn't work. And we published that paper, even though it took several letters to editors and reviewers to convince them that this was really a much more interesting paper than the other one we could have written. Here is another algorithm for the VRP that works in a mediocre fashion. You see? So we should start being more accepting of that type of thing and not just look at comparisons as the sole means to determining who is doing good research and who's not doing good research.
Yeah. Start to better appreciate the negative results derived from very serious research, rather than just looking into did it improve by 0.5% the best known solution?
Exactly. And in practice, nobody cares about 0.5%. Huh?
Yeah.
In vehicle routing, 0.5% is, I don't know, the noise of a little tiny bit of traffic that you might encounter during the day. Nobody cares about that. They care about, does it work? Does it always work? Is the solution robust? And is it reliable? Is it easy to maintain the code, etc.? Just completely different things than we rely on as a measure to evaluate the research quality.
Yeah. Ruben Ruiz, who was a subject to guest, has been very vocal about the gap between theory and practice in OR. I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
I know Ruben very well, and I think he has many interesting things to say about that. Having gone from academia to practice, of course, he's seen that a lot of what we do in academia is not directly useful in practice. Now, I think you'll agree that it doesn't always have to be. I saw a very nice analogy a few days ago of a water ecosystem. Where you saw the clouds, the water evaporates, and then the clouds come over the mountain, the rain drops down in the rivers, flow to a lake, and at the end of the lake you have a dam with electricity turbine. Okay, take that system, and then you see that the rain falling down is the fundamental research. When it flows to the lake is the more advanced or the more TRL level increased strategic basic research, for example. And then you have the completely applied research near the dam where the water is used to produce electricity. Okay, and you can spend all your time doing things at the dam, doing research at the very high TRL levels, really applied levels. But if the rain is no longer there, fundamental research, then the lake will dry out and you will not have any electricity at the dam. So I thought it was a very accurate depiction, and I think we need to have research that doesn't care about practice also in OR. We need to have fundamental research. You need to be able to try out completely new ideas, completely new algorithmic ideas, even though you don't see any practical application for that. Otherwise, you'll never have any new ideas at the end where we meet the practice. So, and I think Ruben will definitely agree to that. We need fundamental research. But on the other hand, he's perfectly right that we cannot stop there. And we also need to do research on where our field touches the side of practice. And also, I think that is where the more empirical research comes in, but because how do you inform practice about what we have learned from this fundamental research about what works and what doesn't work? Can we finally have this paper that proves that late acceptance is a good idea? Or under which circumstances is it a good idea, and when are you better off doing simple steepest descent? We need that paper, but we need to have different types of research for that. And I think that will get us closer to practice. Having these, and I mean, if you're a doctor and you're wondering whether you should give patients aspirin, you don't go looking through 30,000 studies where people have been given aspirin for different type of things. No, you go to the library where they keep all the meta-analyses and say aspirin effect on headache. There will be one concluding study saying, okay, yes, aspirin works. You should give this dose for these types of people, this dose for these types of people, etc. So we need that type of research.
Right. So it's about doing empirical work in a serious manner. And, I think also we should find ways not only to decrease the gap between theory and practice, but also I think within our community, when you think about the people more interested in doing mathematical optimization things,
absolutely.
And compared to those who are doing heuristics, sometimes they're independent sub-communities, but we need a better conversation. We need to understand each other and also put aside some of the prejudice, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about...
And the inferiority complex.
Yeah. Maybe on the one hand, maybe develop on that, not necessarily damaging the field as, as people have been doing, publishing those crazy metaphor-inspired metaheuristics. On the other hand, not generalizing and not putting everyone in the same, bag. There are serious people also doing metaheuristics, and in practice, at least to my knowledge, you tend to use more heuristics than the intricate exact methods to solve real life problems in a lot of cases. There is room for everyone, but we need a better conversation and
exactly. What can we learn from each other? And I think it would really help if we had each other's codes, so you can build things without having to construct them from scratch. I don't want exactly, especially exact methods. I don't want to start from scratch, re-implementing an exact Bender's decomposition method I see in some paper, for example. Maybe I can use it in my heuristic, but I'm not going to implement it from scratch.
Yeah, the issue is if you want to do a significant contribution, you need to be literally part of the group at times. And there are very few groups responsible for pushing the field towards in that regard, because they have so much experience and the codes and so on. And if you want to join, it's very complicated. I mean, it takes a lifetime to understand what they did. And by the time you understood, they already, a few steps ahead. So it becomes impractical to do research in that direction. The similar things can be said about, heuristics, although there's let's say a lower bar in terms of complexity or, mathematical theory, but to, learn and have experience to do an efficient local search implementation, for example, or, having enough knowledge to understand what works and what doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Kenneth, could you tell us about your involvement in Euro, particularly your role as vice president of the working groups?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think it was like 2015, and I became Euro vice president too, until probably 2019 or so. I really loved that time. Euro is such a rich, friendly, nice association. Entire Europe is there. You get to meet so many people from so many different areas of OR. So you really get a really broad view of what operations research encompasses. It's an incredibly broad field, actually. So I really enjoyed being vice president of Euro. Perhaps my most visible contribution is the logos. Under my vice presidency, all the working groups got a professionally designed logo, not by myself, but by a professional agency. And then we thought in the Euro Executive Committee, okay, now all the working groups have a nice logo, but Euro still has a very old-fashioned logo. So the logo of Euro was also designed by that same agency under my vice presidency, and then later the national societies got a logo. So I'd say I had a big influence on the visual of Euro. Every time I go to a conference, a Euro national conference, I see lots of these logos that have been designed while I was vice president. And I loved the job, because as VP2, you're responsible for the working groups, but also for summer and winter institutes. So it also made me see again the value of these institutes on young people. Even if it's shorter, if it's just 1 week, yeah, we need to do that for our young people. It's such a valuable instrument. And Euro has the money, so if anybody sees this, organize a Euro Winter Institute, please. Yeah.
Very nice. What are your current hobbies?
Hobbies. Yeah, so I told you I still play the guitar. I swim quite a lot. I started playing badminton again 2 weeks ago. I used to play that for many years, but then I forgot about it for, I don't know, 15 years. And then I started playing it again. I'm still alive, still in one piece. So that's good. And then, yeah, I'm married. I have 3 children. So I love to travel for work or with the family. Let's say, those are my hobbies, so to speak.
Yeah, and you should definitely jam one of these days.
We should. Maybe even online. You can do it online, I think.
Why not?
You just have to find a music style and then go for it.
Yeah. And what are your plans for the next years?
In terms of research?
Everything.
Okay. Okay, let me start by research. I would like to do, I continue what I'm doing now. I'm still working a lot on optimization and routing, generally in an urban context now, like urban logistics, routing within the city, not just parcels, but also like grocery delivery and those types of weak routing problems. Yeah, I'm really passionate by this project of turning metaheuristics into an empirical science. And maybe I wanted to mention this paper I wrote with lots of people about this initiative by Jerry Swan called Metaheuristics in the Large, which is also going in that direction. It's about building an ecosystem of metaheuristic tools and software that you can use to do large-scale experimentation and not rely on individual projects to do the experimentation. Contains everything we talked about open sourcing the code and having projects that can work together, and be very nice if we can achieve a bit of that vision. Meta-analysis is on my agenda for different types of problems, but yeah, we need to find funding for that, which is not always easy. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, I have 3 children, which is more than enough. So no, don't expect any news on that front for me, and the rest, continue my life. Yeah.
That sounds very exciting. And do you have any final thoughts for our young audience?
For the young people.
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of research, you should at some point identify your domain, have a wide view on the field, but pick a domain and then become an expert in it. So build your reputation in that specific field so people get to know you. Oh, you're the guy of, or you're the girl of that problem or that algorithm, etc. That helps in your own, doing your own marketing. So go to conferences, speak to people, create your own little community of collaborators. Don't always just stay under your supervisor's wings. You can, I mean, in most situations, I think young people are free to build their own network, so should really do that. What else? Perhaps don't stay in a dead domain where there is not much progress, even if your supervisors might be an old crocodile working in a domain which is not really relevant anymore. Then try to do something else, something exciting. There's so much going on machine learning and the integration with heuristics. We haven't talked about that, but there's definitely a lot of future in that field. So pick something that you love and feel passion for, and have fun. I think the metaheuristics community and the entire operations research community, I've always experienced them as being extremely friendly, cooperative people, and it's so much fun to solve problems using analytical tools that, recommend it to anybody. Make sure you have fun doing that, and then the rest will follow.
Yeah, wonderful advice. And if you could briefly comment on your insights regarding machine learning and metaheuristics, that would be nice since you mentioned that.
Yeah, but I thought this was not going to take another few hours. But this is such a wide topic. But there's, of course, several ways in which you can bring these fields together. First of all, I think many machine learning, if not most machine learning problems, are essentially optimization problems. So we can bring metaheuristics in there to just make better machine learning, more efficient machine learning methods using techniques from heuristics. And I've witnessed that people working in machine learning have very little knowledge of the advances in heuristics and metaheuristics. So what they build is usually rather simple and rule of thumb without even doing something simple like iterated local search, bring just a little bit of stochasticity in there, or grasp, or a simple variable neighborhood search type of optimization method can really improve a lot of the machine learning methods, I'm sure. But perhaps more interesting is the integration of machine learning into the design of heuristics. One area where I see potential, but that's, I guess, still in its infancy, is to learn to have a model like a large language model. So if we have a large language model, it should be able to learn how to build an optimization model from a verbal description. And it can start by asking, you could say, I have a vehicle routing problem where I want to route, just an example, I want to route nurses that visit disabled people for insulin injections. And then the large language model asks the relevant questions. So, okay, how do the nurses travel by car, by bike? Where should I get the network data? Where should I get the distance matrix? Do the nurses have breaks? Do the same nurses always have to visit the same patients, etc.? And based on that, construct a model in some formal language, not necessarily mixed integer programming, because if we're doing heuristics, we don't need to have all the bells and whistles of the mixed integer programming paradigm. But I think that could be a really interesting way of doing good work, and that would really help people, because, as I said, modeling now is very interesting, but we know very little about how to formalize it and how do you build a model from a real world problem. That's still a very open question, and maybe it's too difficult to have formal recommendations on how to build a model, but maybe we can use a large language model to learn how to build a model. That's one example but I mean, that's still far in the future. Or maybe we could use a machine learning model to learn the relationship between algorithms, instances, and solution quality. So I give you a problem, I give you some instances. Which algorithm do I need for that? Build me one. Maybe machine learning can do that in time. So there's so much going on. These are relatively far off. We need to. These are not coming tomorrow or the day after. Maybe 10 years or so. But things are moving so quickly in this field that is very, very exciting to be in. I think we're in a very exciting field. Maybe out of the last years, things are repeating themselves and we know how to solve vehicle routing problems. We know how to build algorithms for them. But I have a feeling that there's much more we can do better empirical research, and use these things like large language models to really help us build models. For example, there are many exciting things that we can still do that have not been done yet, but that will really give us lots of exciting opportunities for research over the coming years.
Yeah, great insights. I'm glad I asked you this last minute question. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. And I think as long as these ideas help disseminating OR and help OR tools become more accessible to practitioners and even young researchers, I think this is something that could be very beneficial in the next years. And well, let's see. So
Could not agree more.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. It was really great talking to you.
It was, I agreed. I had a lot of fun, and thank you so much for inviting me. As I said, I feel truly honored to be in your esteemed series of podcasts.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And let's hope we can meet each other again in the next couple of years. And take care.
Sure.
And I wish you all the best. Bye.
Same to you. All the best.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.